All right, so today's topic that we're going to cover today is jQuery UI, right? We talked about some of the features in jQuery on Wednesday. Today we're going to continue talking about it, a particular extension to jQuery, which is jQuery UI, right? If you go to jQuery.com and up here on the left-hand side, right, you can click on that, and this is jQuery UI. And this is an extension to the base, to the core jQuery, which gives us all sorts of widgets like tabs, spinners, progress bars, menus, dialogues, date pickers. All sorts of widgets can enhance the interaction with the user. Other cool things are you can make your page very dynamic, so that, for instance, you can start dragging content around. You can sort lists, right? So you can rearrange lists. So I like to play around with that a little bit. Last time, I believe we linked to jQuery, right? That's that. I mean, if you're going to go to a production environment, that's typically what you might do, right? But in a development environment where maybe you don't have guaranteed access to the network, perhaps you're a commuter and you do a lot of development on the train. Like I do sometimes, you don't have access to the internet, right? So sometimes it's convenient to have to download jQuery. I'm gonna download jQuery UI, which includes jQuery, right? So I'm gonna download it. Let's see, where am I gonna download it? In downloads, save. Oh, I already have it actually. I already have it in downloads. Let me go to downloads. And downloads, I downloaded, there it is, jQuery UI. If I open it up, there's a couple of things that I need from here. Let's see, I need, that's the jQuery UI. That's the minified version of the jQuery UI. That's a CSS that I'm going to need as well. And it also downloads the latest, the corresponding version for jQuery, right? So I'm gonna just bundle this up. I'm going to just copy it onto a local file system, a location. Let's see. Let's go. I have it on C, and if I go to Essentials and I go to Experiments, and we are having, no, wait a minute, Essentials, and then CS5610 Experiments. And this is I'm going to create here a directory for jQuery UI. So jQuery UI. So in there, I'm going to create two folders where I'm going to copy the JavaScript in there, and I'm going to copy the CSS in there. I'm treating this as if it were its own project, right? Where jQuery UI is the root of that project, yes? Within that project, there are a CSS directory and a JS directory, maybe even images in here, right? As if this was its own project. Obviously, it's not, right? It's under a bigger project, right? But I just want to show you how you organize the directory structure for a given project, a self-contained project. Okay. So let's see. Let's copy here the jQuery. I'm going to copy it in here. I'm going to paste it. I'm also going to copy jQuery UI. I'm going to copy in there. There it is. And into CSS, I'm going to copy jQuery UI CSS. There it is. What else do I need? Maybe the images. Let me copy the images as well. There we go. All right. I'm going to go back to my my Visual Studio, and I'm going to update my my directory. If I'm in Experiments, let's see, Bootstrap. All right, so I'm here. I'm going to reload. I'm going to refresh the directory so I can see my new jQuery UI directory. There it is. My jQuery UI directory now has the JavaScript, which I just embedded. The CSS, the images are there. Okay? All right, so we're ready to go. Let's start playing in this, and let's create a couple of HTML files. So 000, my first one. Now, instead of having, in last class, I had a different JavaScript outside, right, which I linked from within the document, right? And that's the way you should do it, right? You should have the HTML, and separately, you should have a CSS and the JavaScript. Yes. For academic purposes, I'm gonna have everything self-contained within the HTML. Right? Not that you would actually do this in production or in a development environment, but just so that it's self-contained. Each experiment will be self-contained, and I don't have to deal with so many files. I'll just have everything embedded here. Okay. All right. So let's have it here. Hello, jQuery. Oh, what extension did I give it? HRML. HTML. There it is. Okay. Okay. Hello. Okay. So I'm going to embed my CSS. Right. So I'm going to embed first the CSS. Right. So it's style sheet. But style sheet. And I'm going to say that the href is CSS slash. Why is it not auto-completing for me? Am I in the right directory? I am. Why is it not auto-completing? CSS and close it. Okay. So, and then the script, I'm going to go to JavaScript, JS. Why is this not auto-completing? jQuery, refresh. I'm in the right directory, right? It's not seeing it. Oh, there it is. Why wasn't it seeing it? Okay, for jQuery UI to work, you first have to load jQuery, the core, right? Once the core is loaded, then you can load the UI extension, right? So we're going to close that. Now, okay, we've loaded jQuery. Now let's load jQuery UI. Source. All right, now it sees it. Why wasn't it seeing before? jQuery UI. There it is. There we go. Yeah, we don't need this. I'm just going to have an H1 here, and it says hello jQuery. Right. Actually, to make sure that this is working, I'm going to put here a class equals hello. I just want to make sure that from jQuery, right, I can grab that. Now remember that this syntax for jQuery, remember that $sign is the alias for jQuery, right? And the jQuery is just a function, right? That it's very smart that if you give it another function as an argument, what it'll do is that it'll wait until the entire document is loaded, until the DOM is parsed, right? And everything's in memory. And then once it gets the event from the browser, it will call your function. It says, hey, we're ready to go. Okay, the DOM is parsed. We can start manipulating the DOM. All right. So what are we going to do? Just to check that it works, we're going to grab that hello, right? And we're going to change its HTML content. Notice that the content initially is empty. Yes. We're going to put in there hello world. Okay. So let's run that, see if that works. Okay, hello world, right? So we have dynamically filled that in. Everybody okay? So jQuery is installed. Let's play around with jQuery UI. All right. Okay. Let me copy that. Let me rename this as 001. Okay. All right. One of the cool things that we're going to look at some of these features. These are really cool features, right? This is one of the these three: the draggable, resizable, and sortable. One of the more, I think, one of the coolest features that jQuery UI has. Never mind all the widgets that it gives you, right? All the widgets are really, really nice. Well, let's look at the interactions, right? Like draggable. Draggable is going to allow us to make anything on the page draggable, right? Because you can start dragging anything. And all these examples, I definitely encourage you to go through all these examples one by one, right? And down below, it says the source code to get this example working. To get something to be draggable, it's as simple as getting a hold of the element, right? Either by class or by the name of the element, or by ID or whatever, right? You grab the element that you want to make draggable, and you just call draggable. That's it. You call the .draggable method on it, and it becomes draggable. All right, so let's play around with that. Right now, it's grabbing something that has an ID, right, of draggable, which is this one, right? There it is, ID draggable. See that? Right. So for this one, let's call this the draggable experiment. So I'm going to put here draggable. No class. I don't want that. I don't want to do that. Let's make a couple paragraphs draggable. So let's have a paragraph here, and let's put some content in there. Let's put lorem ipsum here, maybe. Lorem ipsum, and we'll put let's see what content. How about that? I'll copy that. I'll paste in here, right? And I can run this sub1. There it is. So it's draggable, and there's a paragraph. Notice that the paragraph is not draggable right now, right? It's selectable. It allows me to select. This dragging here, that's really the browser, right? Trying to actually HTML5 does support a rudimentary mechanism for dragging and dropping, right? For like being able to drag files into the browser and things like that. But let's make this. Let's use the jQuery UI. So let's create a couple paragraphs. So we have 2 paragraphs. Here we go. We have 2 paragraphs. None of them are draggable. What we could do here is that any element I can grab, right, by saying P, right? So now I've grabbed the P, right, the paragraph, and I can just make it draggable by saying draggable and calling that function, right? Remember, this is what this does. What does this do? It grabs an element, and then it becomes a jQuery element, right? It adds all sorts of new features, right? On Wednesday, we saw that we could call the .css, .html, .remove, a whole bunch of things, right? jQuery UI adds even more, right? Such as the draggable. All right, that's added by jQuery UI, right? All right, so let's do that. Let's refresh this. Notice that I refreshed. Nothing looks to have any difference, but now, right, I can just move around the paragraph. Right? I can just drop it anywhere I want. Actually, all paragraphs are now draggable, right? Anything is draggable because again, jQuery is it says this matches more than one paragraph. It matches all the paragraphs, so all the paragraphs are draggable. Or we can be a little more specific and say that we can give it a class and only this one we want to make draggable. So maybe we add a class, drag me, right? Now if I go and if I want to be more specific, notice if I don't change anything, still all paragraphs are draggable. Notice that I refresh, all the changes go away. This is non-persistent, right? You are modifying the DOM, right, in the current session of your browser, right? When you refresh, it reloads and reparses the HTML. It's non-persistent, right? Anyway, so notice that even though I put the class, it's still grabbing both paragraphs, right? All paragraphs. So I can be more specific. I can say I want only the ones that have the class drag me. So if I refresh, notice that this is not draggable, but this one is, right? Because it has to drag me. Make sense, right? What if I want to add another? Maybe I want to make the H1 draggable. I can say class drag me, right? If I refresh, this paragraph is still draggable, but for some reason H1 is not draggable. Why is that? Well, because in our selector, we were saying that we want all paragraphs that say drag me are draggable, right? But if I remove that, I'm saying that everything that has the class drag me is draggable, right? Regardless of the type of the element, right? So if I can refresh, now the paragraph is draggable and also the header is draggable. So anything now that I paint or I name with a class of drag me will be draggable, right? Regardless of what type of element it is. Any block element, any I can say that maybe this dummy over here, right? I can say span class drag me, right? Oops, sorry. If I just want to make that piece of text draggable, right? So this is draggable, and the paragraph is not draggable, but the dummy text is draggable. See that? Right? You can make things that are draggable within things that are draggable. You can configure the draggable, right? You can say that maybe I want to be able to, I can configure it saying that I want a grid, right? So notice right now it's very smooth, right? It's pixel perfect. I can move things by pixel by pixel, right? But maybe I want to have a grid that says that a 20 by 20 grid where things get stuck to the grid as you move them, right? So now notice that it gets stuck, right? Make sense, right? Also, the dummy text is also right with the grid. Make sense? All right. Now, all these configurations, notice that the configurations are by passing a JSON object as an argument to the method invocation, and all that is very well documented in in each one of these examples, right? You can go to the API documentation, and it'll tell you all the options that are available. The one we're using is grid, right? Grid. If you go to grid, it tells you that you have to provide, right, the name grid and then an array for the X and the Y. Make sense? You can also configure the axes. Right now, you can move, right, either way, X and Y, right? Or you can tell that I only want to drag on the X, right, or only want to drag in the Y, right? I mean, there's all sorts of configurations that you can add. The type of cursor that you want to show in this, a delay, meaning don't start dragging right away. Wait until you have dragged at least a couple and then start dragging, right? Or wait 100 milliseconds, right? This is so that we might remove, unwanted drags, right? I didn't really mean to drag it, right? It was a mistake, right? So I don't have to do like an undo or anything. So that all sorts of things, right? Also, you can once you've called draggable on a function on an object, there's all sorts of other methods that you can call on it, right? Right, you can say remove the draggable function. I don't want it to be draggable anymore, right? So you can remove it or altogether, or you can disable it temporarily, so you can re-enable it later on, right? So you can enable it, disable it, enable maybe with a button, right? So you can click a button, you make everything draggable, and then you click another button, and then everything is not draggable, right? So you can do programmatic, and also you can do events. You can say, as you're dragging, notify me, right? Because maybe I want to do something, right? As I am dragging, I want you to tell me where are you in the window, right? Or maybe, or you can tell me when are you starting to drag, or when are you stopping dragging, right? When does it start? When does it stop? And for all of these, what you do is that you provide, for instance, you can say start, right? In start, you can give it a function. You can give it a function. It says, and in here it says you can do console log, start drag. Okay, or when they stop dragging, there's a stop. There's a stop. Also, you can provide a stop, right? So it can notify you when it stops. Stop. So stop. So, for instance, in our drag, we can look at the console. We can look at the console, and if we refresh, as you start, where's the console? Oh, there it is. Start drag. So as I start dragging, notice that it renders start drag. When I stop, I let go, it says stop dragging. Plus, each function typically also provides some data about the event, right? So, for instance, it'll give you, it tells you in the documentation, it tells you that it provides an event and a UI. The event is, in the event, you can have things such as, where, what is my current position, right? Or what was my position when I started, with my new position when I stopped. The UI is a connection into the element itself that is being dragged, right? Maybe you can query it and ask it, right, things about the element. Make sense? All right. What else? Let's see. Let's look at the other one that I like very much is resizable. Right? Resizable is also very cool. Let's copy this. I'll call this 002. And I'll call this resizable. Resizable. What's that? And this is resizable. And I don't want this class. And how about resize me? Resize me. There we go. Right. So yeah, so we have actually, why not leave it there? Let's leave the drag me there. So we'll leave the drag me functionality, but we'll make this paragraph down here resizable. Class resize me. Resize me. Right. If we run our second experiment, number 2, notice that this is draggable, but even though I said that I want this to be resizable, it's still not resizable, right? I only gave it the class, right? Giving it the class doesn't do anything, right? It only would allow me to grab it and be more specific about it, right? So I can grab it, right, by saying here $, resize me. Right, I grabbed it, and then calling resizable on it. I can say resizable. Right, if I refresh now, notice that if I hover, notice that if I hover close to the edge, right, close to the edge, notice that I get handles. You see that? Right. Also, if I hover towards the edge over here, I get handles. Right. Also on the corner, I get a handle as well. Right. That if I grab it, right, I can start resizing it. Right, and making it whatever size I want it now. You see that? So this one is draggable, and this one is resizable. Notice I do not get handles at the top, or I don't get handles on the left-hand side. But that's we can change it very easily. We can give it arguments, right? We can configure it, right? We can configure by saying that I want handles. The handles that I want. If we go to the documentation, we go to the documentation, and I go to resizable. Oh, resizable. If we look at the API documentation, I can configure the handles. Right, you configure handles and say that the default is that the handles are only in the east, south, and southeast. Right, that's the default. But I could give it all of them. I want all around, north, south, east, west, right? And then southeast, southwest, everywhere, right? So I'm going to copy that, and I'm going to put it here as an argument, saying that I want handles all over. Then I'm going to go back to my now notice if I hover on top of it, see that? If I hover on top of it, or to the left or to the corner, right? I can resize from any corner. Right? I can resize from any corner. I can resize from the top, from the bottom, from the right-hand side. Right? Make sense? Actually, let me paint this. Let me put here a style saying that if it's drag me, I want the background color so I can see it better, right? So the background color, I want beige. Oh, that's drag me. Okay, and I'll do resize me. Resize me. I'll put it light gray. Okay, so this one is resizable. Right, so I can grab it here. I can resize it. Notice that it's spilling over. Right, my paragraph is not big enough. Right, my paragraph is not big enough. We can change that. But one of the things, notice that the dragging has a grid, but the resizing does not, right? We can turn on grid for that as well. Notice that it's spilling over, spelling over, right? We can change that by saying that the resize me, if it has resize me, we can say that the over, what is it? Oh, what is it? Overflow. Oh, I don't have a overflow. I can say that the overflow, what I want to happen with the overflow, meaning if it's too big and it doesn't fit, what do I want to do? Right? By default, it just shows, right? But I can say that I want a hidden, meaning that if it doesn't fit, just clip it, right? Just clip it, right? So this one over here, right? If I resize and it doesn't fit, notice that it just clips it. See that? I can also have something that is both draggable and resizable, right? So I can say that this resize me. I can also paint it with drag me, right? So it'll do both, right? So this one, I can resize it, right? I can resize it and I can move it around, right? Okay. And something inside dummy text is still draggable within the parent, right? So it knows that this is within the parent, right? So it moves with the parent, right? So even if I move it, oh, notice that I clipped it, right? I said the overflow hidden, so it doesn't show. But if I didn't have an overflow, it would show. Okay, it would show somewhere else. Okay, everyone okay? All right. All right. Let's look at one more. Uh, 003. And here, let's look at one of my favorite ones is sortable. Sortable. And sortable allows you to do a really cool interaction for line items, right? Where when you have a list of things, right, and you want to be able to sort them, right, so that initially you might have it in a particular order, right, but you might want the user to select in what order you want them, right? You're adding new things dynamically, and then you want to resort them and move them around. So, for instance, you might have item 1, and you might have several items. Right, so this might be item 2, 3, 4, and 5, right? Which renders here as follows. So it is. I have my items there, and what I want to be able to do is grab that UL, right? I'm going to say that maybe class reorder me. Okay, I want to make that line list reorderable, right? So I can go here, right? I can say I can grab that. What was I call it? Reorder me, right? Is that correct? Sortable. So now, right? It doesn't work. What happened? Oh, dot. Let's see. There we go. See, I can move them around. So it's kind of I can drag things around, but the behavior is that as I move them around, right, all the elements move out of the way, right, for me to be able to drop it in its new position, right? So I can leave item 2 there now, right? I can reorder and put 5 at the top. I can put 1 at the bottom, right? And I can reorder them. One of the things that you can configure here is that if you are reordering things vertically, right? It makes no sense to allow them to drag things horizontally, perhaps, right? So that's one of the things that you could do is that you can configure this, right? So that I might want you to drag only in one axis. I only want you to do the y-axis, right? So that means that I can only now move, right? Even though I can move in left, right, it doesn't move left, right? It only goes up and down. Make sense? Make sense? All right. Cool. All right. So yeah, so sortable is very, very nice. You can do both. You can sort things horizontally or vertically, right? You can move things around, which is very nice. It is one of my favorite behaviors in jQuery. Right. Any questions? Yes. Yeah, more dynamic, right? So, for instance, one of new content management systems, right? Where you want to be able to develop write content, paragraphs, articles, and things like that. Instead of having to push a button to move things around, right, or resort things around. It'd be nice if you give them the ability to move things around dynamically, right? These are things that are taken for granted in a desktop application, right? In a desktop application, you expect things to be draggable and resizable, right? Right. This is my desktop, and I expect that this is a window, and this being a window, obviously I can resize things, right? It's a desktop, right? Obviously I can move things around. So in a desktop, we take it for granted, right? More and more people are demanding that web applications have the same kind of interaction, right, that they have in their day-to-day desktop applications, right? If you go to Gmail, right? You go to Gmail, right? This is an example application that takes this ability, right, of being able to select things, move things around, right, where you can put them and put them, right, because well, I can do that in Outlook, why can't I do it in Gmail, right? I mean, you take it for granted in Outlook, but then when you go to a web application, maybe you have lower expectations, right? But people are starting to demand, right, that why should applications be less in the web? Okay, so these allow you to do all these kinds of very highly interactive, highly dynamic applications. Right? Remember, we're not creating just web pages; we're creating web applications. All right. Okay. Someone was asking me, oh, can we use WordPress? Somebody was asking me. It says, well, no, you can't use WordPress. You can build something that looks like WordPress. You can build WordPress. Okay, that'd be a nice project, but you can't use WordPress. Okay, so yes, we're interested in not building web pages. We're interested in building web applications. Make sense? Right. Okay. What? Let's go on to the next one. So yeah. So right now we're making things so that they're draggable, sortable, whatnot. But what we want to be able to do is interact with users, right? And as we're interacting with users, we want to be able to respond to those users, right? For instance, if they click buttons, or they drag, or they press a particular keyboard, we would like to be able to identify those events, right, and react to them, right? So let's look at the simplest of event handlers. 004, right? Let's open that up. And so the simplest is being able to just click, being able to just click events, to handle just any click, right? So let's see. You can make in jQuery, you can make anything clickable. It doesn't have to be a button, right? Anything is clickable. So for instance, if I grab, let's see, if I grab this H1, right? If I grab H1, I can make it clickable. You can say H1. Right, to make it clickable, we use the click function, right? The click function allows us to create an event handler, right, on any elements, right? So for instance, grab the H1. If you call the click function just like this without any arguments, what you're doing is you're generating the event, right? Right, as if somebody would have actually clicked it with their mouse. Okay, so here we can programmatically generate the event, or we can listen for the event when it comes in. Over here, like that, we are generating the click event. But if you give it a function, it will call that function if that event occurs, right? If you click on H1, make sense, right? So we can say here, we can say console.log, H1 clicked, right? So let's go to 4. Let's look at the console. Oops, what's going on? Oh, that's nothing. Right. So if I click on if I click anywhere, nothing happens. Right. Obviously, well, that's a start dragging, right? But if I click on the H1, notice it says H1 clicked. You see that? H1 clicked. The function, when it calls you, it also provides for you an event object that you can use to know things about the event. When did it happen, right? Who generated the event? Where was the mouse exactly when the click event occurred, right? Again, this is all things that you would expect a programming language to be able to do if you're in Java, right? If you're in Java and using Swing, or you're in a Visual Basic, right, and you're using all sorts of UI components, right? You handle all these on click on event, but well, you can do the same thing in the front end. Okay, do exactly the same thing in the front end. So I clicked it. I can print out also the event to see what it looks like. Console.log. I can print the event. So if I click on H1, notice that it gives me an event. There it is. It says that there's an object that tells me, for instance, things such as whether the Alt key was pressed when they clicked, right? So maybe you want to be able to handle Alt click or Shift click or Control click, right? So depending, so you can ask, what modifier key was pressed at the time of the click, right? So yeah, that you can do different. You can handle it differently. You have the X and Y position of the button when it was clicked, right? You have also the target. That's important. The target is the actual element, right? The element that was clicked, right? So you get a handle on the actual element that was clicked, so that you can do additional processing, right? So for instance, if we print that target, let's print the target, event.target. There it's notice that the target is that H1. Notice that if I hover over it, it highlights on the left-hand side. So that is the DOM element, right? That is the DOM element that represents that H1 element on the left-hand side. I can since I have the DOM element, I can actually notice that it's the raw H1 DOM element, right? It's the raw H1. Notice that it's not a jQuery object, right? It's the raw H1 DOM. I can convert it back, right? I can convert it back by putting the dollar sign the dollar sign in parentheses around it and convert it back into a jQuery object, right? So I can do more manipulation on it, right? I can now that it's a jQuery object again, right? I can do H1 and do whatever I normally do with jQuery. I can change its look and feel, right? I can change its color to be red, right? So now it's clickable. So as I click, notice that the color changed. It's red, right? So I can react immediately to events there, right? Or maybe I can just remove it, right? I can just as I click in H1, poof, it's gone, right? I removed it from the DOM. So I can manipulate this whole thing. Everything is still draggable. Everything is still sortable. Everybody okay? Everybody still with me? Okay. All right. All right, so we know how to do clicks. Now, notice that the function is a throwaway function. You see that? It's an anonymous function, right? Some of you might find that disturbing of having these functions, embedded inside of parentheses, inside of a function call. If that disturbs you, then you can declare the function outside and give it a name. That's fine. Click H1. Right, and then we can pass the function as an argument. If that's easier for you to read, right? The function is declared outside. It has a name, and then I'm just passing a reference to that function here, telling, hey, when the click happens, call that function. Okay, makes sense? Right? If I do this, it still works the same way. Everybody okay? All right. Yes. So jQuery is JavaScript, right? jQuery is it's a library written in JavaScript, right? And the reason we even use jQuery is that I mean, you could do all this with plain old JavaScript, right? But it would be a nightmare, right? It would be a nightmare because if you get it to work in Chrome, all of a sudden it doesn't work in IE, right? Or you finally get it to work in IE, but it's not working in Safari, right? So you end up creating in JavaScript lots of if else, if else, if else, if else, if else. You know, a lot of switch cases saying, you know, if it's this browser, do it this way. If it's that other browser, do it that other way, right? And so what jQuery does is says, you know what? Instead of you writing all that, I'm gonna handle all that, right? So instead of you creating in JavaScript, you know, on click, blah 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 blah, whatever. I'm gonna give you one function that works across all browsers, okay? And I'm gonna call that function click. What's that gonna do? Obviously, it's gonna use JavaScript on click method, right? JavaScript has the on click method that allows you to create handlers, right? But it gives us a cleaner interface, right, to these features, and it gives us a cross-browser compatible, consistent behavior across all browsers. Make sense? So it is. I mean, you still find people that write in raw JavaScript, right? But it is you know, it's more and more typical that people use libraries such as jQuery, right, to handle this. Yes. Yeah, you can use jQuery all you want everywhere. Yep. Yeah. So if that's a little easier to digest, you can leave the function outside. Okay. Everybody okay? So I'm going to say CSS, and I'll put just the color, and red. Right, and I'm going to put this function down here. Right, so if I click it, there we go. All right, everybody okay? All right, let's do this. Let's do something more interesting. Let's combine now those two abilities of clicking, right, dragging, sorting, right, and all that. All right, let's play around with that. Let's copy that. Let's go on to 06, 05. Okay. So now we want to add content. I want to add content as you click a button, right? So let's make a toy content management system, right? A very simple content management system, right? So in a content management system, I might have a blank slate, right? And as I have anybody use Squarespace? You know, anybody know? Okay. Or any content management system. You know, you have these abilities now that you click a button and new content appears, right? And then you can edit on the fly that content. So let's play around with that. So we'll add on click, right? Add elements on click. Right. So I'm gonna name this. I am going to remove all this content. I'm not gonna make this draggable, but I'm gonna leave all that. I'm gonna remove most of this. Right? Let's see. Let's start off from scratch. H1. I don't want any of this. I don't want this clickable function. I don't want that either. Okay. What I want to do is add a couple buttons here. Huh? So for instance, we'll call this button add. We'll call this class or maybe an ID. ID add paragraph. Okay. So add paragraph. All right. And let's. This is 05. Let's go to 05 here. There we go. We had a button. If you click on it, nothing happens. Right. So let's add an event handler and say that if I click on add paragraph, right? If I click on add paragraph, right? I want to call a function called add paragraph. paragraph, right? So, and the function doesn't exist, but let me write it, let me put it here. We say function add paragraph, paragraph. And here I'm going to say console, adding a paragraph. Okay. So if I click on it, notice that it's calling adding paragraph, right? So it works, right? Anyway, that's nothing new. That's very easy, right? Let's what we're going to do here. We're going to actually create a paragraph P. Okay, paragraph element. I just created it, and I'm gonna add it to the body. Okay, so I'm gonna say body append P. Okay, I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna click. Nothing seems to be happening. What happened? Oh, actually, they are being added. Notice that this is the DOM. See that? That is the DOM, and the DOM is changing every time I add something. There's a new paragraph. See that? So I am manipulating the DOM, but there is no content in the paragraph, right? So let's put some content here. I'll call it new paragraph. Okay. So now I'm adding. All right, there it is. So they're being added to the paragraph. Make sense? Okay. All right. Let's make this something a little more generic, so that notice that they're being added where? At the bottom, right? They're being added as block elements, right? They're being added as block elements, and they're being just appended to the end of the body, right? So they appear the way they go, right? In the order in which they were added. Okay. Let's make this paragraph a little more interesting. Maybe I want to make the paragraph draggable, right? So that even though I'm adding, right, I can still move them and put them wherever I want. Okay, make them a little more interesting, and not only make them draggable, make them also resizable. They're both. They're draggable and resizable. Right, so if I refresh and I add the paragraph, I can notice that I have the resizer. Right? I can resize, and I can resize from the right, so it doesn't fit, right? And I can move it around. I can move it around, right? So it's kind of like the beginning of a sort of like a content management system, although I can't edit it, right? I can't edit it. Actually, no, I can edit it. What I can do is turn on content editable equal true, right? So that when if I add, right, I can click. Oops, sorry. I can actually edit the content, right in place, right, like an editor. I can actually copy and paste, right? Actually, I can make things bold and italic. Right, so I have a very simple, right, trivial editor, right, just by turning on that attribute, right? That's an HTML5 attribute that makes anything editable, right? I can still resize it, right, and I can still move it around, and I can edit it. So it's kind of like the beginnings of a mini content management system, right? The only thing is that as I keep adding, everything gets added at the end, at the bottom. Right? That's kind of a bummer, right? That's all the way at the bottom. A better way might be that I add it maybe in the center, right? I can change this so that it's always added at the center, for instance, right? So that it'll put it in the center, and then I can put it wherever I want it to put it, right? So I can set the CSS, right? I can set the CSS before it gets added to the body, right? I can set, for instance, I can set several things. I can set its position to be absolute, right? I can set its left, that's X, right? I can set it to be 100 pixels, 100. I can set its top, right? Set it to also 100, right? And then it gets added, right? So let's do that again. So let's add a paragraph. There it is. I can move it around, added. So it gets added to the center, right? And then I can move it around and put it wherever I want. Make sense? All right, so it looks like one thing that we might change is the draggable. We might have the grid. I said the grid, so that it's 2020, right? So that I can, because the problem with this is that I can't, since it's pixel perfect, I want to align these two. It's kind of very hard to align these two paragraphs. See that? But if I put grids, if I put a grid, now that I add it, right, it's easy for me to align two paragraphs together. See that? I can align them together and put them nicely flush against each other. Make sense? Yes. Good question? Oh, okay. All right, everybody okay? Right. One cool thing that might be is that instead of this being hard-coded X, Y, and the content being hard-coded, is that those could be arguments, right? It could be an argument so that we can have the HTML content, X and Y, right? So we can pass that as an argument, and then this HTML, right, instead of being here, right, it could be in the append. I can say, or HTML, I can say HTML, right, HTML. So that argument, this text, actually, let's call it something else, text. The text that I want inside, right? And then I'll use the HTML function to set the HTML in there. And this here, this could be X, left is X, and top is Y. Okay? And then here, this click event, instead of just calling at it, I need to pass it arguments, right? I need to pass arguments. So instead of just being this, I'm gonna do a function. The default behavior is to call add paragraph with some defaults, right? Maybe new paragraph. And the default is to always show it at 100 and 100. Or 150 maybe. There it is, right? So it still works the same way, right? But now it's a function that I can call. Everybody okay? Everybody good? All right. All right, so we have a mini content management. What's the problem with this content management system? That I can't save it. Right? I can't put it. If I refresh, everything goes away. Or can we save it? Where could we save it? Well, ideally, you could save it. You would save it at the server, right? You would send it off to the server, right? You would create some kind of object representation, some object model in the client, right? And send a JSON representation to the server. The server would then insert some row in some table, right? And then tomorrow when we want to load this, we would click on load, and then it would read it from the server, and the server would spit out the object, and then we could recreate it, right? We don't know how to do that yet. So instead, we're going to save it in the browser, right? The browser provides a local database, right? A local storage, right? That you can put stuff there, right? That it will be there until you clear out the session, until you clear out the memory. Right? As long as you don't clear out the memory, it's there, right? Right, like a cookie. Right? This is like cookies on steroids, right? Cookies have limitation on space and some limitations that this new API doesn't have. All right, so let's play around with what's called local storage, right? Let's play around with local storage. Okay, so I'm going to copy this, and this is 006. Right? So in local storage, what we can do, drag me. Oh, we don't need this anymore. Yeah, we don't need that. So what we want to do, right, is that as we are, let's see, before we get to local storage, let's create a button here. Let's create another button. We would like to have a button here that would allow us to save, right? Save. Okay. So we need an object or some kind of object or some kind of string that we could save, which we can then parse, right, to be able to recreate this, right? So let's see how we could we do this, right? So let's call save, and let's have a function here that if I click on the save button, right, save. If I click on it, I will call a function called save. All right. So let's write that function save. Right. How can we do this? What would we do? We would have to what? Well, there's two options. One option is that as I add the paragraphs and as I move them around and as I resize them, I maintain an object model. Yes? Right? Perhaps an array of objects, right? Each object represents a different paragraph. Yes? And as I resize them, I update my data model, right? And as I remove or I add or do things around, and I update my array, I update my objects. That's kind of laborious, right? We already have an object model, don't we? The DOM. The DOM is an object model, right? So we could go back to the object model, right, to this DOM and recreate your created object, a JSON representation of that document object model, right? So let's do that. Let's see. Well, we have these paragraphs, so we can grab all the paragraphs, can't we? Right? We could grab all the paragraphs. We know how to do that. There they are. We have all the paragraphs, var all paragraphs, and we can print that, can't we? We can say console log all P's. Right. Let's look at what we get. Let's see what we get here. All right, so we can add a paragraph, move it around, add it, move it around. Oops. Add, and then I'm looking at the wrong one. Sorry, 6. Whatever. Where? Oh, yeah. Thank you. Computers. They take everything so literally. Okay, when I save, notice what I get. I get an array. Look at this, right? Let's look at the console. Right? We get an array of what? P. See, there's all these P's are there, right? All the paragraphs are there. We get other stuff there, right? We get other things that are not part. But what we're caring about is these P's over here, right? These P's. We get other things in there that are jQuery, that have something to do with jQuery. And what we want to be able to do is iterate over those. We want to create an object model representation of this. Okay. So for instance, we want to convert this into an array of paragraphs. We're going to convert into var paragraphs, right? Paragraphs. So we want to create an array of these things. Okay. I mean, it's already an array. It's already an array, but it has a lot of stuff that we don't care about. I mean, look at this. It's got, like attributes, child nodes, and children, and class name, and all the stuff that we don't care about, right? Whether it's draggable or not. What do we really care about? We really care about the content, the text, right? And the position, X and Y. That's all we really care about, right? So let's extract only those things, right? So let's iterate over this array, and let's extract those pieces. There's two ways of iterating. We can iterate the regular way using for, right? Because it is an array after all. But there's a different way of iterating it over it using jQuery itself. Okay, let's use jQuery to iterate over this, right? Just because it's jQuery, right? We're learning about jQuery. We could do all P's, and we iterate over it using each. Right? There is no for each in JavaScript. Right? This is the closest you can get to the behavior of each. Right? You give it a collection, right? And then as you iterate, you are given each item as it iterates. Okay? All right. So each, the way it works is that it'll iterate over this array, and it will call you, right? You give it a function, it will call this function, notifying you, hey, here's a new item, here's a new item, here's a new item, right? So here's a function, and it gives you the index first, right? So you know which one you're in, right? 0, 1, 2, 3, and the actual item. Right, so let's print these out. Let's do console log the index. So let's not print that. And let's do console log the item. Okay, so let's add a whole bunch of paragraphs. Save. There they are. Right, so 0, index 0, and then the paragraph. 0, 1, and then the paragraph. 2, and then the paragraph. 3, and then the paragraph. You see that? right? They're all draggable. I didn't bother moving them around. Okay, now we have the item, and the item, notice it's the raw DOM element. You see that? I'm hovering. It's the raw DOM element. We really want to keep using jQuery on them, right? We want to ask it the position, the HTML content, right? Although we could use raw JavaScript too, right? But why bother? We're learning about jQuery. So we have the item. I'm going to convert the item back into a jQuery object. I'm going to say var p. I'm going to say I'm going to convert the item back into a jQuery object so that we can ask it things such as, what is the position? We can do p.position. Position is a jQuery function that only works on jQuery objects. Yes? We can ask it the HTML content, the text, right? The HTML inside of the paragraph, right? So we can say p.html. Okay? So instead of printing the index and the item, we're going to print these two things. We're going to say console.log the position, the HTML, and let's print the position. Right? So add paragraph. I can move it, add paragraph, and save. There it is. Let's see. Oh, there's a lot of garbage in there. Yeah, that's it. There it is, right? So the new paragraph. That's the actual content we care about, right? And there's the object for the top and the left. There it is, top and left, right? Why? Wait, can I ask it for the text? There it is. I just want the text. There it is, right? I just want new paragraph, the actual text. And then the position. Notice that all the positions are the same. If I move them around, right? If I move them around, right, and I clear this, and then I do save, notice that each one has its own position. You see that? Right? So now I'm ready to create my object, right? I can create my object. I can create a var p object, right? Paragraph object. It'll be a JSON object that will have the text will be, we call this text, right? Will be the text, right? It'll have the X, which will be the position left, right? The Y will be the position top, right? Now that I have the object representation of the text and the position, I'm going to put it in the array, right? I'm going to put it in the array. And the array, what was the array called? Paragraphs, right? I'm going to push it. I'm going to push the object to the array. This is the object. I'm going to push it, meaning I am appending the object to an empty array, right? And I'm done. And at the end, what I'm going to do is I'm going to print out the entire array. I'm going to say console log print the entire array paragraphs. Oops. Paragraphs. Right. So there it is. Save. There's the array of how many elements, as many as I added. If I open it, I can look at each array. New paragraphs. They're all at 150. They're all at 150 because I never changed their position, right? But I can, right? I can move this around. There's one more maybe, right? And I can say that this is 1, right? This is 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7, right? And I'm going to save, and the objects are, this one is 4. This was, notice the positions changed, right? 90 to 70, paragraph 7. 6 is 150 to 30, 150, 190, right? Paragraph 3 is 30 and 230. You see that? Right, so I'm ready to store this, right? I'm ready to store this in local storage. Let's do that. Right? To store in local storage, you have to convert it into a string. Local storage only accepts strings, right? So this object, just like it is, would not be acceptable, right? We need to convert it into a string. So to do that, right? To do that, here's a string representation. We're going to use an API that is a very common API. It's the JSON API, right? This is native to the browsers. All browsers provide this object, and it provides many methods, but two of them are of most interest, right? One of them is to convert objects to strings, right? And the other one is to convert strings back to objects, right? And we're going to use that the other way around to load it from local storage, right? So let's do this. So JSON, to convert it into a string, there it is, stringify. There it is, stringify. Meaning this object could be as complex as you want. Doesn't matter. It could be an array of objects that contain other arrays, that contain other objects, that contain whatever, right? It iteratively, recursively goes through the entire. It's a deep copy, right? It converts the entire object into a string representation, right? So stringify, and we give it the object. The object is paragraphs, right? And we're going to print the string representation. Let's add a couple of paragraphs. I'm going to save. There it is. So this is the object representation, which is an array, right? And you can interactively navigate the object. Whereas this is a pure text string. Yes? See that? Everybody good? All right. Okay, so we're going to put it in local storage. Let's do that. Local storage is very easy. What you do is just say the local storage. Local storage. Notice that's a known object, right? It's a native to the browser, right? And you can say, I want to store. It's like a hash table, right? It's like cookies, right? You say you give it a name and then the value, name, value, name, value, name, value, right? So we're going to call this. We'll call it, to put stuff in the local storage. We use set item, and then what do you want to call it? Right, so this is a page I'm editing, so I'm going to put it in page. Actually, I might already have a page from last night. So I'll call it page 1, 2, 3. Okay, I'm going to put it in there, right? And what am I going to put in there? This string. Okay. Right. Everybody okay? All right. And I'm going to just remove this. I'm going to remove that. Save. And let me reload. And let's see if it works. So I got a paragraph. I'm going to put it here. A paragraph. I'm going to put it there. I'm going to something simple, right? So I'm going to call this paragraph 1, 2, 3. And this paragraph, I'm going to call it 2, 3, 4. Right, and I'm going to save it. So hopefully it saved it. I don't know, right? Let's see if it saved it. Let's we saved it, right? Let's go on to the next. We'll create a new experiment. Right, 007. Notice that the experiments build on each other, right? Right. Each experiment is kind of reusing the same concepts from the previous experiments, right? And this is what I'm expecting from your experiments, right? So throughout the week, perhaps you have, right, a theme, right? Hopefully that theme is based on the projects that you're thinking about, right? But they should tell a story, right? Notice how they build on each other, right? So plan them out. Right? Okay, so in this one, we're going to add another button, right? We're going to add another button called load. Load. Oops. Load. And in load, right, we're going to go here, and we're going to have an event handler. We're going to say that load is going to call a function called load. Right? And so let's write the function load. Let's see, function load. And I'm just going to console log, make sure that this is being invoked. So this is experiment number 7. Right, so I click on load, there it is. So it is being invoked, all right? Okay, so what do we want to do? We want to retrieve from local storage, right, whatever we saved, okay? So let's retrieve local storage. So we're going to say, actually, we can just console log the whole entire local storage object, local storage. Right, so let's load. There it is. Look at that. What's in there? It says you have an employee object. You have another first name. You have that's the page I was working on with last night with the other class. You know, with CS 4500, 4550. And that's why I didn't use page. It's this page 123, right? That's the one we loaded, and it's this text, right? That's the text I care about, right? So let's retrieve it. Let's retrieve it, right? So I'm gonna do var the page that I'm gonna retrieve is it's gonna be from local storage, and just like I use set item to store it, I'm gonna use get item to retrieve it, right? So I'm gonna say get item. And I called it page 123. Okay, and then I can print it. I can do console log page, and we'll notice that the page is just a string, right? It's just a string, right? But we want the object representation of that string, so let's convert it, right? We can say page. I'm going to put it in the same variable, so the page is equal to the parse of page. Okay, it'd be great. It'd be good if we first check to see if the page is null, right? Maybe we never saved anything, right? Or maybe we got cleared out and there's nothing there. So we might do, you know, if page equal null, right? We're gonna bail out, right? We just return. We're not gonna do anything, right? Or maybe we show a message saying there's nothing there, right? Or an alert box saying, you know, there's nothing there. We're just gonna bail out. If it's there, we're going to convert it back into an object. So let's try that. We're going to load. Notice that there it is. It's the original array, right, that we have put in there. One of them is new paragraph 1, 2, 3, right, and the old position, and oops, and the other object is new paragraph 2, 3, 4 with 30 and 150, right? So what's left to do? Now that it's an object, well, it's actually an array. Basically, I need to iterate over this array, right, and retrieve each individual piece, right? What does it have? It has the text X and Y, right? So let's iterate over this. Iterate, so for var p in page. So var the paragraph is the page sub p, right? Now I have the paragraph, right? I can extract the text from the paragraph, right? In the text. I can extract X from the paragraph.x. I can retrieve the Y from the paragraph Y, right? Right. So I have each value, and guess what? I have a function, right? I have a function that allows me to pass it text X and Y, and we'll add it, right? Add all these paragraphs there, right? So let's do that. Let's call add paragraph, and it takes as argument text X and Y, right? So let's try that and reload. There they are, right? My original paragraphs. That were there before I added it. I can keep adding stuff, right? New paragraph. 4, 5, 6, right? I can save it, right? I can reload, and there they are. They're still there, right? So this is, you know, I can now extend this, obviously, not just paragraphs, right? I could do, you know, form elements, right? I can do images, right? I can do videos. I can do all sorts of things, right? And this would be a mini, right, content management system that is being stored where? Is stored locally in my machine, obviously, right? If I clear out my cache in my browser, everything goes away, right? So the interesting part would be for this to you be able to save this in a permanent place, right, and persist it in a database, right? And we'll take a look at that when we look at web services and we talk about you know, Node.js and how to create databases and whatnot. That makes sense? Everybody good? All right. Yes. I'm sorry. Each object has somewhat of an inheritance. Each object inherits from other objects, and in JavaScript, the inheritance is not like we understand it. It's called a prototype inheritance that allows you to add on the fly, right? It allows you to add attributes, allows you to add functions, right, to any object, right? And each object knows from which prototype its parent object that it got all these attributes and got all these all the functions, right? So each object inherits from the object class in JavaScript, right? But there's several classes. There's the object class, the string class, the number class is the function. Function is actually a class, and each object, each type of class has different methods, right? And as you create new objects, they inherit either from a string or from an object, right? And the inheritance type is prototypical, and we're not going to get too much into that. But prototype is the way that handles that mechanism. No, there is no overloading in JavaScript. There is something that looks like overloading that you have to implement yourself. It's a function that's called the same, right? It's just one function, right? And the argument. So, for instance, we've seen something similar to overloading, right? We've seen something that looks like overloading, but it's not. .css. That looks like it's overloaded, right? Because we have used two versions, right? One that takes a string, two strings, right? And this one takes an object. You see that? So you might say, oh, well, that's overloading. That's what overloading is, right? You have two functions with two argument lists, right? Two different signatures, right? But no, actually, it is one object, one function, right? But it's a smart function. It's a function that looks at the data type of the first argument. Okay? If the first argument is a string, it behaves one way, right? If the first argument is an object, right, it behaves a different way. Okay? So it's a very smart object. $sign is also looks like it's overloaded, right? Because in this one, the argument is a string, right? But over here, the argument is a function. You see that? And the way it can tell what to do, it's not overloaded, right? What it does is that the first thing that it does, it looks at the argument and says, okay, what are you? Oh, you're a function? Oh, it means that you are waiting for me to call you when the document loads, right? What are you, a string? Okay, oh, that means you are HTML or some DOM element, right? And even there, even if it's a string, there are different types of strings. Look at this. If the string has a hash, a dot, right? Or just plain like this, right? It is interpreted as a selector. Yes? It means that this should match something in the existing DOM. Yes? Right? But if instead that string contains pointy brackets, right? It means, right, that this is an element that doesn't yet exist in the DOM. I am creating a brand new. Okay? I am creating a brand new DOM element, which you might add or not to the body, right? Right? You might decide what to do with it. Right? What are we doing? We're configuring, blah blah blah. We're painting it, and then we're appending it to the body. Yes, that's what we're doing. So yeah, there is no overloading, but you can do things that look like overloading. Okay, and there are some libraries out there that extend JavaScript to look more like what we understand: inheritance, constructors, setters, getters, and things like that. Right? Like for instance, in JavaScript, you don't have information hiding. Public, private. You don't have that, right? But there are mechanisms by which you could, simulate those behaviors, right? Where you do information hiding, right? That you can only go through setters and getters, right? You can do something like that, but it is not natively supported. Okay. Inheritance, again, inheritance is prototypical inheritance. It's not the inheritance the way we understand inheritance. So the language is not exactly what we expect. Interfaces, we use interfaces all the time in Java and right, and in C#, right? There are no interfaces in JavaScript, but you could do things like interfaces, right? There's a really good book, Design Patterns in JavaScript. That's a very good book, and so it looks at all the design patterns that we typically study in object-oriented programming languages, right? And there they go through all the design patterns, right? The singleton pattern, right? The data object pattern, the transfer pattern, all the command pattern, all these patterns that we use in object orientation, they implemented through JavaScript. Very good book. Yes. For instance, if you lose network connectivity, right? For instance, you have all these all these applications are moving to the cloud, right? And so they depend on a network connection, right? What do you do when you don't have a network connection, right? So what some applications do is, okay, well, fine. I'm doing this AJAX call. It's coming back, timing out. I must not have a network connection. So what I'll do is I'll maintain a local cache, right? Next time around, I get a network connection. I'll push everything, all the changes to the network connection, right? So you have what you typically end up having is a data model in the client, right? That follows the same MVC pattern, right? Of controllers, the data model and the view, and then you have also a local cache that is being cached locally on the browser, and then when something is dirty, right? When the object model is, if you're only browsing and looking at the data model, you're not changing anything. If it's only read, there's no need to even go to the server, right? Right? You have the local cache locally, right? But once you start moving things around and you need to, the data model is dirty, you need to synchronize with the server. And that's when you decide either, if you have a network connectivity, yes, at the earliest possible, you will persist it. Meanwhile, right, you can work with your local storage. Yes, remove. You can just say remove item, and clear. Clear will clear the whole thing. Yep, you can programmatically do it, right? All right, let's do something more interesting. So this is going to be a change of pace. So I'm going to start a brand new HTML. I'll jump to 10, 0, 10. How's that? Okay. Web APIs. Web API. All right. So here's a web API I found the other day, which is pretty cool. This web API gives us a RESTful access to IMDb. Everybody familiar with IMDb? IMDb is the Internet Movie Database, right? It's a database of all the movies and TV shows, and have all the actors and all the synopses and reviews and all sorts of things about movies. Yes. Anyway, so this is the unofficial. It's an unofficial API. It connects to IMDb and allows you to query it. Okay. And this is a pattern. This is the pattern that we're going to follow ourselves when we start, creating our own applications, right? Where you have a server, right? And we have the client, and then with your JavaScript, you're going back to the server asking for data, and this comes back as a JSON, right? Either as one object or maybe an array of objects. Yes, and the server responds with data, and then we updates the client. Right? Either with jQuery, which is very low. It's a very low-end API, right? That you're doing things by hand, right? You are manipulating the DOM yourself, right? Next week, when we start talking about single-page applications, instead of doing it by hand like this, what we want to start using is a framework. Okay, very similar to the components that you have in C# and in Visual Studio that you can drag and drop tables, and you can drag and drop all sorts of things, right? And that you have iterators that can iterate over data models. Very, very similar. We want to be able to do that instead of us, creating each table row and adding it to the table and adding all these things, which is very tedious, right? We want to use a framework to do this, right? So we want to be able to do this at a much higher level, right? But anyway, let's stick to this. So we're going to have our own server, which is going to be Node.js or IIS, right? Which is going to be hosting services which are going to be connected to a database. But we don't have this just yet. Instead, we're going to go out to another server out there, okay? This server, the IMDb server. We're going to go out here, giving it a URL with parameters, and this is going to respond to us with the JSON, okay? And this JSON, we're going to parse it, and we're going to be able to update the front end. Yes, but we have a problem. This one, with this JavaScript, when it goes to the server, notice that this page and this JavaScript were both downloaded from this server. Yes? So they were downloaded from the server, and the browser has no problem letting you connect a network connection back to the server where you downloaded from. There's no problem. But the browser will have a problem if that JavaScript, which was downloaded from one domain, tries to connect to another domain, right? Okay, and the browser is going to stop us and say, no, that is a security violation. I'm not going to let you do that. Okay, and there are some official solutions to this and some hacks around this problem. Okay, today we'll look at the hack, right? Later on we'll look at the official solution, right? If you do the same thing to a Google server, right? If you go to Google and you try to connect here, Google will have no problem connecting to this, right? And so because Google is using the modern way of solving this, right? These respond saying, yes, I will accept requests from scripts that have been downloaded from other domains, right? These servers, most servers don't allow this, not yet anyway, right? The servers that allow this are what we call cores, right? That allow cross origin requests, right? So they allow requests from different origins, things that have been downloaded from other places, okay? So all of Google's web services allow cross origin requests. This one does not, right? So to be able to do this, it does support another technology though, right? Perhaps an older, I guess it's somewhat older. It supports what's called JSON-P. It supports JSON-P, right? So let's play around with this. Okay, let's play around with it. All right, so let's come here and IMDb. So I want to search the database for a movie by name, and down below it has examples. So I want to do Star Wars, okay? And JSON. Notice it supports JSON, JSON-P, and XML. Okay, so let's do JSON and limits. I want 7, and I'll say search. There it is. So it comes. This is the JSON that would come back to us. This is the JSON that would come back to us, and this is the URL that we would use. So let me copy that. Copy the link. Right. I'm going to come here, and I'm going to create here. I'm going to create a hyperlink with that reference. I'm going to just paste it in there. Get Star Wars. Okay. And this is a web API, so I'm going to put H1. Right, and I'm going to load. Where is it? 10. Right. Oops. Oh, wait. What? What happened? Did I not call it 10? Oh, let me run this. Wait, 10. Oh, there it is. Okay. All right. So if I click on this on Get Star Wars, there it is. That's the JSON that comes back, right? I have a plugin in my browser that parses that JSON and then it pretty prints it, right? It makes it so that I can click it and I can navigate through this whole thing But really what came back is just plain alt text. That's really what came back, right? I can actually see it. I can view it if I inspect and I do a refresh, right? I can look at the network and I can see that that's the query that went out, right? Right, and I can look at the response. This is the response that came back from the server, right? I can preview it, right? This is the text that came back. Notice it's a single line, right? That my plugin parsed, and it understood that it was JSON, right? And it pre-printed it. Make sense? So we want to be able to do this programmatically, right? Not here by clicking by hand. I want to do this programmatically. Receive the object, and then iterate and display something in my page. Okay. So let's do that. 125. Oh man. All right, it'll have to wait. The way we're going to do this is through Ajax, right? In Ajax, we can provide arguments that can tell us. We can tell it what URL we want to connect to. It's that same URL. That same URL we want to connect to, right? Right? If it's successful, I want it to notify me with a response. Okay? Right? Notice that this is going to execute right away. Let's go back here. I am going to refresh the page, and I want to look at the console. I'm going to refresh the page. Oh, I never loaded JavaScript? Oh. I never loaded this over here. Let me put it in there. Refresh. Is it not there? What's going on? Inspect. Console. What's it saying? Fail to load, blah, blah, blah. CSS. JS CSS? Really? JS CSS. Where did I put it? Did I put it in the wrong directory? Oh my goodness, I put it in the wrong directory, didn't I? Why would it let me do that? Okay, there it is. Open it up, run it, view. Okay, there it is. That's the error I was looking for. See that error? Right? It's saying HTML cannot load cross-origin, allow control access. Okay, this is because I'm trying to connect to a domain that is not my domain, right? But as we saw, it supports JSON-P, right? So we can go back here and says, I want the URL the way it looks if I'm doing JSON-P, right? Let's do that again. Right, the only thing that changes format. See, format equals JSON-P. I'm going to copy that. Copy. Right, and I'm going to paste it in here. Right, and you also have to say that the data type that I'm expecting is JSON-P. JSON-P. Okay, and I want to console log the response. Oops. Where is it? I'm going to refresh. It's taking a while. There it is. It came back. You see that? It's an array. It's an array that now, where is this array? In my JavaScript, right? In that success method. I can now iterate over this, right? I could iterate over this and update my page, right? So this is the first one. We can see the directors. Oh, no directors. Wait, countries. USA. Genres. Action, adventure, sci-fi. We can look at, there's an image we can go see, right? There's a URL for an image. Oh, that's the IMDb. That's the IMDb. There are no posters. No posters? Really? Let's look at the last one. As a clone of the wars, there's a plot. there's a poster. There's a poster. We gotta go. We're gonna get kicked out. You can download that poster and display it right in my UI. We'll do that on Wednesday. Okay. Thank you.